Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we are discussing chapter 2 in Canto 2, and chapter 1 was about the description of universal form of the Lord. So Sri Shukadeva Goswami started explaining the meditation on Vishnu, and he first took up the Virat Rupam of Vishnu, which is all pervasive throughout this entire creation. And so there is no aspect of creation that is missed in the Virat Rupa of Vishnu. And it is also easy to meditate on Virat Rupam of Vishnu. So it is generally prescribed to the sadhakas who are predominantly adopting the means that are impersonal in nature, like jnanis, who are predominantly interested in the Brahman realization. And also, it is useful for the materialists who are accustomed to believing the nature as the ultimate cause of creation. So they consider nature to be equal to God. So it is easy for them to meditate on Virat Swarupam because everything is perceivable. Most of the items in the Virat Rupam is perceivable to everyone. We can see mountains, we can see rivers, we can see trees. So it is easy for us to imagine mountain to be bone of the Lord, or river to be vein or nerves of the Lord, a tree to be the hairs, bodily hairs of the Lord, or cloud to be the kesham, the hair that is on the head of the Virat Rupam. And we can then imagine the universe itself as being represented in the Virat Rupam of the Lord, starting from the Patala Loka till the Satyalokam. So all the 14 planetary systems form various limbs of the Virat Rupam. So one who is accustomed to the impersonal means of approaching the absolute truth can find the Virat Rupam meditation to be very useful, and that leads to the cleansing of consciousness. So all the methods mentioned in the Vedas, in the Shastras, are means for purification of the chitta. So that is alone, that is the ultimate objective of all the means. But for pure devotees, for the devotees who are accustomed to enjoying the beautiful form of the Lord, they prefer to meditate on the personal form of the Lord. Personal forms of the Lord are so benevolent in nature. They are so beautiful. It captures everyone's attention. Just as we hear from the descriptions of Srimad Bhagavatam that when Krishna was present in Vrindavana, practically everyone was mad after Krishna. Krishna was attracting every living entity. We see the descriptions in Srimad Bhagavatam talking about even trees, insects, birds, stunned by the beauty of Krishna. So sometimes the deer used to chew some food, and it will then forget itself in the beauty of Lord Krishna, and it will just stand still. So all the beings would stand still observing the beauty of Krishna. Rivers would also stop flowing. Yamuna would stop flowing. All these descriptions are there in the Bhagavatam. So the personal form of the Lord is so attractive. It is so beautiful. And the beauty is incomparable to anything that we have seen in this universe, or that anything that we can ever see in the universe. So therefore, the meditation on the personal forms of the Lord, like Lord Ramachandra or Lord Krishna, these are even more glorified in Shastras. So that's why Shukadeva Goswami keeps this meditation after the meditation on Virat Rupam. So yesterday we discussed all of it, and we were discussing some descriptions of the forms of the Lord, especially. And I was taking the verse 12 and I was explaining. And let me just quickly explain. So, in that verse 12, it is explained that Adina Leela Hasita Ikshana Ullasat Brubanga Samsuchita Buri Anugraham. So, his pastimes are also filled with his karunyam, his mercy. The very reason why he comes to this world and performs pastimes is because he is filled with the daya, the mercy, so that he can give an opportunity to the conditioned souls who are struggling in this samsara by experiencing the threefold miseries. And when they hear the descriptions of his leelas, naturally our mind gets attracted to Lord Krishna. And then one becomes the recipient of mercy of Lord Krishna. So Adina Leela, so therefore his act of performing Leela, coming to this material world, it's also magnanimous. Hasita Ikshana, Ullasat, and the way he smiles is also very attractive, and it is radiating the Karuna, his mercy. It doesn't matter who is before him, whether it is Putana who comes to kill Krishna or whether it is gopis who are always immersed in love towards Krishna, it doesn't matter. All of them becomes recipient of mercy of Lord Krishna. Even those wrestlers like Mushtika, Chanura, who came to kill Krishna by the order of Lord Kamsa, were also recipient of Lord Krishna. Because when Lord Krishna kills, that is also for the benefit of those asuras who are killed. Even when Krishna killed Shishupal, immediately everyone in the assembly where the Rajasuya Yajna was happening could see that the soul of Shishupal was merging into Lord Krishna. So therefore, the asuras who are killed by Lord Krishna also are receiving great mercy of Lord Krishna. Brubanga Samsuchita Buri Anugraham. And Samsuchita, so his Buri Anugraham, his extensive mercy is indicated by his eyebrows. So wherever he sees, he showers mercy, just like in a heavy rainy day. We cannot go out sometimes. We have experienced, all of us have experienced. So when we go out, it is extensively raining, and sometimes even if we carry umbrella, it is of no use and we get drenched in the rain, because the rain is like that. The rain is so much. And so just like that, Bhuri Anugraham, it is mentioned here, Brubanga Samsuchitam. So his glance is indicative of his extensive mercy that is showering upon all the conditioned souls. Iksheta Chintamayam Ena Mishmaram Yavan Mano Dharanaya Avastite. So therefore, considering all these facts, one must concentrate on this transcendental form of the Lord, as long as the mind can be fixed on him by meditation. So the mind won't be immediately fixed on the form of the Lord, even though it is beautiful, because we are accustomed to the sense gratificatory pursuits for many, many lives. We are accustomed to believing this body as ourselves for many, many lives. So it is not easy. It is not easy. Despite knowing this fact, despite reading Srimad Gita, Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna himself gives various reasons why we are not this body. We are reading all that, and it seems reasonable also, logical also, but still, to bring it to the realization, to think that we are this soul, it's not easy task. One has to keep reminding that one is Atma, one is Atma, one is Atma, one is different from this body, one is different from this mind. So we have to keep reminding ourselves of this fact that we are Atma. So that is called Anusandhanam. We have to keep reminding ourselves of the fact that we are Atma, and also we have to keep reminding ourselves of the miseries of the material existence. And that is also the indicative of knowledge. Krishna says, Amanitvam, Adambitvam, Ahimsa, Kshantirarjavam, Acharyopasanam, Stairyam, Atma Vinigraham, Vairagyam, and also Janma Mrityu Jaravyadi Dukkha Doshano Darshanam. So he lists out various items, and he calls that I am declaring these items as knowledge. So he is saying Janma Mrityu Jaravyadi Dukkha Doshano Darshanam. So a person who is interested in getting out of this material creation or the samsara should always keep in mind the miseries caused because of birth, death, and old age and disease. So Anudarshana means one has to constantly see, because it's easy to forget all that and get mixed with the life, because the people around us, they don't consider. So we think it is natural that nobody is considering. So perhaps we are only putting effort into something that is not useful for our life. So we should get on with this life. So people, that's why we have to always be careful of the association, because it influences our consciousness. So therefore one has to, by dharana, keep meditating on this beautiful form of Lord Vishnu, and one gets purified by such meditation. And then in the verse 13, ekaikasho angani dhyanubhavayet, and one has to meditate on each anga. We have to start with the lotus feet of the Lord. So that is also mentioned. Padadi yavat hasitam gadabhrataha. So we have to start from the padam. We have to start from the lotus feet of the Lord. Meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord sufficiently, and then we have to move to the next anga, next limb of the Lord. We have to go to the thighs. So we have to go to the leg, and then knees, and then the thighs of the Lord, each decorated with various ornaments. And then one has to go to the chest of the Lord, meditate on the Srivatsa mark and Kaustuba jewel, and then one has to rise and then meditate on the arms of the Lord, then the neck of the Lord. Then one has to come to the face of the Lord, which is brightened with the beautiful smile of the Lord. Hasitam Gadabrata. Hasitam means smiling. So one has to then see the smiling face of the Lord. Think about his smile, and then one has to think of his lotus eyes and how he is showering his benedictions, his mercy upon all the devotees. If we keep meditating on this way, so none of these are imaginations. One will immediately feel the purification happening. One will immediately feel the bliss by such meditation. Jitam jitam sthanam apohya dharayet, param param shuddhyati dir yata yata. So as much as we involve ourselves intensively in that meditation, we will to that extent get purified. The more the mind becomes fixed upon the different parts of the limbs, one after the other, the more the intelligence becomes purified. Just like Krishna says, "Ye yatamam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamiham." So as much as we surrender ourselves to the Krishna, as much as we take this meditation seriously, we will to that extent get purified of all the contaminations. Verse 14, Yavanna jayeta paravaresmin Vishveshvara drashtari bhakti yogaha tavat staviya purushasya rupam kriyavasane prayataha smareta. So I already mentioned, but if we are not able to develop the faith in the personal form of the Lord, so we have enough descriptions, enough proofs of the personal form of the Lord. None of these are imaginary. None of these forms are material in nature. All these forms are purely made of ananda, purely made of love, and non-spiritual and non-material. It is fully spiritual in nature. So none of these are imaginary in nature, imagination. But still, if one is lacking in faith, one can then meditate on the Stavya Purushasya Rupam. One can meditate on the Virat Rupam that was discussed in the first chapter. So that is the material form of the Lord. We can think of it like that. So the whole universe, the universal form, is just like the material form of the Lord. And because all the materials within the universe, all the ingredients within the universe, the Lord is having them as body. Whether it is the Chetana or Achetana, whether it is the conscious or sentient entity or insentient entity, all these are body of the Lord. We are also part of the body of the universal form of the Lord. So one can meditate. If one is a gross materialist, not interested or not able to develop sufficient faith in the personal form of the Lord, then it is prescribed for such materialist to develop a sense of loving service unto the Supreme Lord by meditating and remembering the universal form of the Lord at the end of his prescribed duties. So Krishna also says in the chapter 12, he says, Mai aveshya manoyamam. So the best thing is to always think of me. But if that is not possible, you can do abhyasam. By practice, you can slowly develop faith, and meditate on me. If abhyasam is also not possible, then you can then give up all the results of your activities. And if that is also not possible, you do everything for me. Like that, he gives various options in 12th chapter in devotional service. And so if that is also not possible, then he says at least develop jnana, and better than jnana is the dhyana, meditation, and better than dhyana is giving a no working for me. So he lists various steps in the devotional service. So just like that, here Shukadeva Goswami also is describing. So if a materialist is not able to develop faith in the personal form of the Lord, then you can just do your prescribed duties, swadharma, and just try to give up the results to Krishna and meditate on the Virat Rupam of Krishna. Sthiram Sukham Chasanam Astito Yatir Yada Jihasur Imam Angalokam Kalecha Deshe Cha Manona Sajjayet Prana Niyachen Manasa Jitashoha. So when the yogi desires to leave this planet of human beings, he should not be perplexed by about the proper time or proper place, but should comfortably sit without being disturbed, and regulating the life air should control the senses by the mind. Manasva buddhyamalaya niyamya kshetrajna etam ninayettam atmani atmanam atmani avarudhya tiro labdopashantir virameta krityat. So one has to control the mind. Mana swabuddhya amalaya niyamya. So through the regulations, one has to use the intelligence in controlling the mind. Just like Krishna says, Indriyani paranyahur indriyabhya param manaha manasastu para buddhir e buddhe paratustushaha. So Krishna says the indriyas are superior to the body, because those senses are the means for our experience with this material world. So they are superior. Indriyani paranyahur, indriyabhya param manaha, and superior to the senses is the mind. Indriyabhya param manaha, manasastu para buddhir, and superior to the mind. So why is mind superior to senses? Because it is mind that is forcing our senses to engage in various sense objects. So it is the mind that is processing all the experiences that we gather through senses, and then it feels the pleasure or pain. So our feeling of pleasure or pain is because of the mind, not actually because of senses. So therefore mind is superior to the senses, and intelligence is superior to the mind, because intelligence is commanding mind to seek after something or to reject something depending on its past experience of pleasure and pain. So it has the sense of discrimination, the sense of discerning what to take and what not to take. So if the intelligence is material, if it is contaminated, then it will then it will then command the mind to seek after the sense objects. But if the intelligence is the vyavasayatmika buddhi, if it is resolute in its purpose, then it will then command the mind to utilize the senses for the satisfaction of the Lord. So here it is mentioned manasva buddhya. So buddhya, by using the intelligence, mind should be controlled, because manasastu para buddhi. Buddhi is superior to the intelligence. Mind. Buddhi is superior to the mind. So manasva buddhya amalaya niyamya. So by regulating, proper regulation, our intelligence should be sufficiently equipped with all the necessary equipments called the practices, the sadhana. Only then the intelligence will be having that strength to command the mind. Evam buddhya amalaya niyamya kshetrajne etam. So kshetrajne, we have seen in the chapter, in the chapter 15, in the chapter 13, I'm sorry. So where Krishna is explaining what is kshetra and kshetrajna. Who is kshetrajna? Idam shariram kaunteya kshetram abhidiyate. So this body is called kshetra. It is called the field. So just like a farmer, he cultivates his crops in the field, and in the process of cultivation, he also has to put lot of effort and maintain the crops by removing the weeds and properly water those crops, and then use the pesticides to prevent pests, and then he has to take care of all that. He has to put a lot of effort, and then at the time of harvesting he'll reap some fruits, he'll reap some benefit out of his effort. So just like that, this body is compared to a field where just like a farmer, we are putting a lot of effort, we are doing karma, so we are acting using this body, and those actions are compared to the work done by a farmer in his field. So just like farmer is putting a lot of effort to reap some benefit in the form of harvesting of the crops, we are putting a lot of effort through acting in various ways by performing various karmas to gain some experience which are fruits of those actions. So that therefore this body is compared to kshetra, and kshetrajna is evam yoveti. Kshetra is, so one who understands this kshetra is considered to be kshetrajna. So one who knows this, or one who utilizes this body, is kshetrajna. So he is called knower of the body. Kshetrajna is knower of the body. So in that sense, he is distinct from the body. So there is no connection between kshetra and kshetrajna as such, because one is seer, one is witnessing all the activities, the experiences, the pains and pleasures, and so on. Whereas the other is just the field that is giving the opportunity to the kshetrajna to experience various experiences. So this kshetrajna is generally called living entity, but then Krishna also in the next sloka says that he is the knower of all the bodies. He is, so this individual kshetrajna is knower of this particular body. I know the experience, I know the pains and pleasures of this body. So therefore, I am also called kshetrajna. But Paramatma knows the experience, pleasures, pains, and the constitution, bodily constitution of all the bodies. So he is called kshetrajna of all the bodies. He knows, he's the knower of all the bodies. So there are two kinds of kshetrajna. So in this verse, kshetrajna is the living entity, the jiva. Kshetrajna etam ninayet tam atmani. So the yogi should merge his mind by his unalloyed intelligence into the living entity, and then merge the living entity into the super self. So this kshetrajna should use his intelligence to control the mind, and then the intelligence should be under the control of the self, the atma. So indriyepe paramanaha manasastu parabuddhir ye buddhe paratus to saha. So saha here is a soul. The atma, the jiva, is superior to the buddhi, and the jiva is also the servant of Paramatma. So if we carefully study the master and servant relationship, then we can understand how to control the senses through the mind, and then the mind through the intelligence, and then identifying the intelligence to be inferior to jiva, who is atma, and then the atma is the servant of Paramatma. So ultimately, the Atma, being the servant of Paramatma, is always supposed to serve Paramatma. So the interest of Atma cannot be different from the interest of Paramatma. Actually, in this material world, it is different. That's why we are in this material world. But actually, in the purified state, the Atma thinks just as Paramatma thinks, and that is called oneness. Oneness in the desire. So Atma has not got independent desire. It has not got desire that is different from the desire of the Supreme Lord, the Paramatma, in its pure state. So that's what is mentioned here. So kshetrajna etam ninayet tam atmani. So ninayet means to merge. Tam atmani, that self, atmanam. Atmanam atmani. So merging that self into the supreme self is what I mentioned as oneness in the interest of oneness in the interest between both Jiva and Paramatma. So that is called merging. Here, merging means the merging of the interest. So there is no independent interest for the Jiva anymore. Avaruddhya means being locked up. So the Jiva and the Paramatma is now tightly locked up in that relation as master and servant. Avaruddhya dhiraha. And what happens then? The result is dhiraha labda upashantihi. So that Jiva, which is now in complete command, in complete servitorship to the Paramatma, is now attaining the Shanti, the full bliss that was lacking during its tenure in this samsara. So now, being locked up in that relationship with the Paramatma, the Jiva is experiencing the supreme bliss, Labda Upashantihi, Virameta Krityat. And then it is ceasing itself from all the external activities. So our reason, the very reason why we are performing karma is because we have something to attain. So that's why Krishna says, I have nothing to attain in this material world, yet I act, to set an example. So by this we can understand we are acting because we have something to gain in this material world. But this yogi who has merged himself into the Supreme Lord and who is now totally dependent, who has no independent interest, is now relieved of all the needs to perform karma. So he has totally ceased himself from performing such karma. Nayatra kalo animishan paraprabhu. So in that state of labda upashanti, there is no supremacy of devastating time. So the time factor is very powerful and it destroys everyone, including the devas or including the asuras. So everyone is subjected to the influence of the time. So the time is considered as the most powerful aspect of Supreme Lord in this material world. Na yatra kalo animishan paraprabhu. Kutonu deva jagatam ya ishire. So there are two kinds of demigods. So one is the administrative demigod who are administering various aspects of this universe. So they themselves are under the control of this powerful time. And then there are other demigods who have earned that state by performing pious activities, by performing various yajnas. And they go to the respective planet of demigods and then they enjoy the facilities in that loka. So we see in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Traividya mam somapa puta papa yajna ishtva swargatim prartayante. So such people who are interested in yajna ishtva swargatim. So one who is interested in the swargatim, the swarga, is performing Traividya mam somapa, and then he performs the yajnas prescribed in the Karma Kanda and he reaches that Devalokam. And then once the pious credits get exhausted, he is pushed out of that Devalokam, he falls into the Martyalokam. That's why we say Kshine Punyam Martyalokam Vishanti. So there nothing to speak of such devas. Even the administrative demigods, they themselves are under the control of this time factor, and there is no need to ask about those demigods who have attained that position just by performing some yajna. Kutonu deva jagatam ya ishre. That's why Shukadeva Goswami is asking Kutonu deva. Where is the question for the devas who have just attained that state by performing yajna? Ya ishre na yatra sattvam na rajas tamashaye na vai vikaro na mahan pradhanam. So that labda upashanti is totally different. The time factor is powerful only within this creation. Within this creation, everyone is under the control of time, whether it is administrative demigods like Indra, Chandra, Varuna, or it is just the people who go there to enjoy the facility. The time factor only can control these people, including all of us, of course. I didn't mention because the devas themselves are under control, so all of us are also under control. But one who achieves that upashanti, labdha upashanti, by merging, by, as I mentioned, when the jiva gets locked up in its relationship with Paramatma and attains that labdha upashanti, complete cessation from all the kriyas, all the karmas will be the result. And such person, they have already crossed the limitation of this time factor. So there is no influence of time factor upon such yogis. And also, there is no question of influence of the sattva, rajas, tamas. Na yatra sattvam, na rajas tamaschaye, na vai vikaro, na mahan pradhanam. So there is no question of sattva, rajas, tamas. And because there is no question of the influence of the sattva, rajas, tamas, there is also no question of the false ego. And then the vikaras that happen, the transformations that happen because of the interaction between the sattva, rajas, tamas and the false ego, the ahankara. So nothing can affect such yogi who has perfectly locked himself in the relationship. So that is called getting re-established in one's swarupa. So that is the actual swarupa of every jiva. So if we are established in the swarupa, then the time factor cannot act upon us. Parampadam Vaishnavam Amananti. And that state, that Parampadam, that supreme state, the supreme destination, Parampadam Vaishnavam Amananti, and that is called as Paramapadam by Vaishnavas. Tat yan neti neti iti atat utsis rakshavaha. So they attain that state, and such Vaishnavas, they are very careful to disassociate themselves from godlessness. Neti neti, they using the sense of discrimination, they discriminate whether it is pertaining to the Lord or not, whether it is having some relation to the Lord or not. Using that careful discrimination, they avoid anything that is godless. So they have no desire to, they desire to avoid everything godless, for they know that supreme situation in which everything is related with the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Actually, everything is related with the Lord Vishnu, whether it is Panjabhutam or any object that we are seeing, anything that is part of creation, nothing is independent of the existence of Bhagavan. So everything is in direct relation with the Bhagavan. When we have this perception, then we are protected from falling prey into the illusion. But if we see that something is godless, then the Vaishnavas, they disassociate from such situation. Therefore, a pure devotee who is in absolute harmony with the Lord does not create perplexities. Visrujya dauratmayam ananya sauhrada. And they give up this Visrujya, they give up these perplexities, ananya sauhradaha. In happily they give up. So for all the others, it is very difficult to give up this attachment, the attraction by the material world. But the Vaishnavas who have understood what is the supreme situation, Parampadam, they have given up all that is not desirable, or all those are obstacles in the path of attainment of that Paramapadam. So just like Krishna says, Yad Aksharam Veda Vido Vadanti, Yad Yatayo Vitaragaha, Yad Ichanto Brahmacharyam Charanti, Tatte Padam Sangrahena Pravakshi. Krishna says, Yad Aksharam, what is mentioned as Aksharam in all the Upanishads, what is mentioned as infallible, Yad Aksharam Veda Vido Vadanti, Yad Yatayo Vitaragaha, and to attain which destination the great sages, they give up the sense of attachment or hate. Yad Yatayo Vitaragaha, Yad Ichanto Brahmacharyam Charanti, and to attain which state, that supreme destination, the great sannyasis, they practice Brahmacharyam. Tatte Padam Sangrahema Pravikshya. So Krishna says, I am going to describe that situation to you. So to attain that state, great sages, they give up everything, all the attachment, all the raga dvesham, they give up, and they practice brahmacharyam, giving up all the attachment towards the sense pleasure, sexual pleasure, just to attain that state. Which means that state, then we should understand the value of such state. So Krishna, so therefore, such people who have understood the value of that supreme destination, the Paramapadam, they give up everything else. They give up everything else that is not connected to Bhagavan, and their goal becomes fixed on the lotus feet of Bhagavan. Krita, and it is mentioned, Krita upaguhya arha padam pade pade. Krita upaguhya, and they keep in the Hridayam arha, that is worshipable, padam pade pade. They keep the lotus feet of the Lord in their heart, and they meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord in every step, because they have understood the value of the lotus feet of the Lord. They have understood the value of the meditation on the lotus feet of the Lord, because that is giving the meditation on the lotus feet of the Lord is just giving them that supreme destination, which is incomparable to any happiness that we can think of within the 14 planetary systems. So that situation is incomparable, because in the previous verse only we saw that that factor of time is influencing everyone, including the great devas. So therefore, such Vaishnavas who have understood this fact won't be desiring to go to heavenly planetary systems, or even Parameshtam, or even to the Brahmaloka. They won't be interested, because time factor is acting everywhere. So therefore, they only have the aim as the supreme destination, Paramapadam, and for that they are ready to give up everything, and they carry the lotus feet of the Lord every time within their heart in every step, pade pade. Ittam munis tu uparamet vyavastito vijnana drigvirya surandita ashayah. So by the strength of the scientific knowledge, one should be well situated in absolute realization, and thus be able to extinguish all the material desires. So one should then give up the material body by blocking the air hole with the heel of one's foot, and by lifting the life air from one place to another in the 6 primary places. So here the path of the yogis, the practice of the yogis is mentioned in detail. So the yogis, they control the prana, and they raise that prana through the 6 chakras, they call, from Mooladharam to the Mooladharam, Swadhisthana, Manipurakam, and in that way they raise the prana by carefully controlling the activities of the mind and the prana, and slowly they gather the prana from the all through they are meditating on the form of the Lord. So it is not that they have stopped the meditation on the Lord's form, and they are just focusing on pulling the prana from the Mooladharam to the space between the eyebrows. They are simultaneously also meditating on the form of the Lord, because we have already seen in the previous shlokas that the yogis, they are meditating on the form of the Lord. So in the shloka 13, it was already mentioned, Ekaikasho angani dhyanu bhavayet. So the yogi is advised to meditate on each limb of the Lord carefully. Ekaikasho angani dhyanu bhavayet padadi yavat hasitam gadabrataha. And from starting from the lotus feet, padadi yavat hasitam gadabrataha, till the smiling face of the Lord, a yogi is supposed to meditate on each limb of the Lord. So therefore, after having described that, here it is mentioned that the yogi should pull the prana from the Mooladharam till the space between the eyebrows. So therefore, we should understand that they are simultaneously meditating on the limbs of the Lord. They have not given up. And also just in the previous shloka, we have also seen the Vaishnavas, they give up everything for the sake of meditation on Lord Vishnu, and they have the goal as Paramapadam. So after having read all that, we are reading this shloka, means that everything else was applicable. Whatever was mentioned in the previous shlokas must be applicable simultaneously along with the practice mentioned in this shloka. So Nabhyam sitam hridi adhiropya tasmat udana gatyorasi tam nayen munihi. And then the meditative devotee, who is a yogi here, he should slowly push up the life air, the prana, from the navel to the heart. As I was mentioning, from the lower chakras to the upper chakras, the yogi should push the prana by what they call as Kundalini or whatever. From that to the chest, the Manipuragam, Anahatam, I guess, and from that to the root of the palate, he should search out the proper places with intelligence. And then thereafter, the Bhakti Yogi should push the air up between the eyebrows and then blocking the 7 outlets of the life. So the life, when someone dies, there are outlets through which the prana leaves or the soul leaves the body. Because if the jiva leaves the body through one of these 7 outlets, then the jiva is bound to take birth again. So that's what is mentioned in Shastras. A yogi should give up the jiva, the atma, through his Sahasratalam. It should burst and he should leave the body. So therefore, he should block other 7 outlets through which the life can leave the body. Then he should maintain his aim for going back home, back to Godhead. If he is completely free from all desires for material enjoyment, he should then reach the cerebral hole and give up his material connection, having gone to the Supreme. So, Stitva Muhurtardam Akunta Drishtir. So, he should have his goal, Akunta Drishtir. Akunta means Vaikunta or the spiritual world. So, keeping his aim as a Akunta or Vaikunta, Nirbidya Murdan Visrujet Paramgataha. Nirbidya. So Nirbidya means the heart should burst, and through the Sahasradalam, Nirbidya Murdan means the Sahasradalam should burst and then Visrujet Paramgataha. And in the path of the supreme destination, the jiva leaves from the top of the head, Murdani. So a yogi should leave his body that way. And that is also called Archiradi Marga in Upanishads. It is all happening with the help of Paramatma. So it is actually the Paramatma who assists the Jiva to leave this body, and it is mentioned in Shastras and mentioned in other Acharyas' work, where Paramatma helps the Jiva to leave the body through the head, through the Sahasradalam. And then, and in fact, in chapter 8 of Bhagavad Gita, we have mentioned. So there is a mention of the path that the yogi takes. In the verse 24, chapter 8, verse 24, it is mentioned, Agnir Jyotir Aha Shuklaha Sanmasa Uttarayanam Tatra Prayata Gachanti Brahma Brahma Vido Janaha. So, Brahma Brahma Vido Janaha, one who knows the Brahman, he progresses through the deity of Agni, Jyoti, Aha Shukla, and so on. And Shanmasa Uttarayanam, he leaves the body at the time of Uttarayanam. And if so, this path, if a yogi is traveling along this path, then he doesn't come back to this material world. And as he progresses, as he travels, the travel is further explained in the verses. Yadi prayasyan nripa parameshtyam. But sometimes some yogis, they wish to reach some planets. Yadi prayasam, some may maintain that desire to reach Satyaloka, for instance. Not all the yogis, but some yogis want to see the creations of the Lord and they want to appreciate the greatness of the Lord. So some yogis want to visit Satyaloka on the way, whereas others, they want to only go to Vaikuntha Loka directly. And along the way, they are assisted by various demigods. Krishna also mentions as the devatas of Agni, Jyoti, the devatas of day, they are all presiding on the path. They assist the yogi to leave. In fact, they worship. So as the yogi is leaving, he has to pass through the various Bhuloka, Borloka, Swargaloka. He has to pass through all these lokas. And when he is passing, all the beings, all the great demigods and the rishis, they offer obeisances to such pure soul. Because it is not at all an easy task to give up the body in such a way that one doesn't get born. It is very difficult even for such devas and the maharishis in the higher planetary system. So when such jiva progresses from this body, from the Sahasradalam till the Vaikuntha Loka, it has to cross various points, Bhulokam, Bhurlokam, Swargalokam, and various demigods also assist in this progress. And sometimes such yogis, they may desire to stay and see the Lord's creation. So, yadi prayasyan Drupa Parameshtyam, some want to see the Satyaloka, some want to see what is Satyaloka because they have read the descriptions of Satyaloka many times in the Shastras and Upanishads. So, they might have that eagerness to see what is there in the higher planetary systems. So, O king, if a yogi maintains a desire for improved material enjoyments like transference to the topmost planet, Brahmaloka, or the achievement of the yogic perfections, Vaihayasanam Uta Yad Viharam Ashtadipatyam. So, Parameshtyam, some may be interested in visiting the Satyalokam, some may be interested to see Vaihayasanam. So, some beings who are known as Vaihayasas, who are certainly at the status of demigods. Ashtadipatyam, some may want to enjoy the Ashtama Siddhis that sometimes the yogis are having as aim. Guna Sannivaye Sahaiva Gachen Manasa Indriyascha. So then such yogi, he has to take away his senses, the subtle body also, along with his Atma. So he has to take subtle body with him to enjoy that enjoyment in the Parameshti, in the Brahmaloka also. And such Yogeshwaras, the great Yogeshwaras, the yogis, Yogeshwaranam Gati Mahur Antarbahish Trilokya Pavanantaratma. So the transcendentalists who are concerned with the spiritual body, as such, by the strength of their devotion, service, austerities, mystic power, and transcendental knowledge, their movements are unrestricted. So such yogis, they can move anywhere to any place within this creation. Na karmabhis tam gatim apnuvanti. This flexibility, this facility cannot be obtained by performing any amount of karma kanda activities. Na karmabhis tam gatim apnuvanti. Vidya tapo yoga samadhi bhajam. So that's why the wealth of the yogis is incomparable to any material achievements. So we have seen in the past time between Vashishta and Vishwamitra. So Vishwamitra was actually a king. So Vashishta was a great Brahma Rishi. So Vishwamitra, along with all his soldiers, he goes to the ashrama of Vashishta. And Vashishta could serve all the soldiers, great phalanx of soldiers, along with Vishwamitra, because he had a Kamadhenu called Nandini. So Vishwamitra thought, because it is so wonderful, I want that cow, I want that Kamadhenu, so please give it to me. But Vashishta was not willing to give. So therefore, he ordered all the soldiers to kill Vashishta. But at that time, Vashishta placed his danda before Vishwamitra, and the yoga siddhi of Vashishta itself could vanquish all the soldiers. All the soldiers were destroyed, leaving Vishwamitra alone. So then Vishwamitra thought, I had all this strength, all these soldiers. In fact, I am the king. I possess all that material opulence, but none of them are equal to the yoga siddhi of Vashishta. What could I achieve with all these material achievements? Vashishta has achieved. Vashishta has far greater opulence than me. And then he gets the motivation to perform tapas. And so the rivalry between Vashishta and Vishwamitra started this way. So the point that I'm trying to make is, the yoga siddhi, the opulence of a yogi is much, much higher compared to the opulence of materialist. A yogi could travel anywhere without any restriction. And a karmi can never even imagine the opulence of a yogi. And the yogi has gained this opulence by intense tapas, vidya tapo yoga samadhi bhajam, by his knowledge, by his meditation, continuous meditation. So whenever one is performing austerity, there will always be benefit for that. Just like Gandhari, she performed the austerity by tying up her eyes because her husband was blind. And that austerity had got its effect. So she got some opulence, the mystic power that other women could not have. So the austerities will always have their benefit. So yogis who have dedicated their entire life for achieving that yogic perfection, certainly they have achieved the opulence that are much higher than any material opulence that we can. Of course, the yoga siddhi is also material in nature, but still the gross material opulence is incomparable with the opulence of a yogi. So Vaishvanaram Yati Vibhayasa. So that's what in this shloka it is mentioned. The yogi then passes. When such a mystic passes over the Milky Way by the illuminating Shushumna to reach the highest planet Brahmaloka, he first goes to Vaishvanara planet, the deity of fire. That's what Krishna also mentions in the 8.24 Bhagavad Gita. Agnir Jyotir Aha Shukla. So yogi should pass through these devatas. So a yogi first goes to the planet of the deity of fire, and it is also mentioned in the Chandogya Upanishad. I'll just read the translation. On dying, such persons, so such persons means the yogis, whether they undergo cremation rites or not, go to the deity of light. It is mentioned in the Chandogya Upanishad. From the deity of light, they go to the deity of the day. From the deity of the day, they go to the deity of the waxing fortnight. From the deity of the waxing fortnight, they go to the deity of the 6 months leading to the summer solstice, that is the Uttarayanam. From that, they go to the deity of the year. From the deity of the year, they go to the deity of the sun. Then they go to the deity of the moon. Then the deity of the lightning. A non-human form takes them to the Brahman. So when they cross this material universe, then the Vishnu Parshadas, they come and then they catch the hands of that yogi and welcome him to the spiritual world. So this is the path of the Brahman. Those who go by this path do not return to the repeated human birth, it is mentioned. So the same description we can see in this verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So a yogi passes to the planet of Vaishvanara, the planet of the deity of fire, where he is cleansed of the contaminations. So Agni is purifier. So the yogi is purified of his contaminations by the Agni, by the deity of Agni. And thereafter he still goes higher to the circle of Shishumara Chakra. So the Shishumara Chakra is said to be the center of all the universe. And he goes to the Shishumara Chakra, and then he continues to go beyond this Shishumara Chakra and go to the planet of Maharloka. So as I said, a yogi passes from the Bhuloka, Borloka, Swargaloka, and passes and then goes to the planet of fire where he is cleansed of some contamination. Then he marches forward and he goes to the Maharloka. Maharloka is just one loka below the Satyaloka. Satyaloka is the topmost planet. And Maharloka is populated with great rishis, Maharishis like Bhrigu. And the lifespan in Maharloka is 4.3 billion years. So, such great yogi, first they reach the Maharloka. All the beings in the Maharloka are great yogis. Even to find one such yogi, it is very difficult in the Bhuloka. In the Satya Yugam, we could see few such rishis, just like Vashishta was such a rishi. Vishwamitra was such a rishi. So we could see such rishis even in the Bhuloka, but it was in Satya Yugam. But in Maharlokam, everywhere there are such rishis. Every rishi is of such a level. Highly spiritually advanced souls are there in the Maharlokam. Just by their mere anugraham, one can get liberated. So they are already in such a high level. So this yogi who has left his body through the Sahasradalam passes to the that planet Maharlokam, where great rishis stay there for uncountable number of years. But at the end of a day of Brahma, there is a partial destruction. So at that time, the beings of the Maharloka, they move to the Satyaloka. At the time of the devastation of the universe, a flame of fire emanates. Ato anantasya mukha analena. So Anantasya, the Lord Ananta, the Balarama, from his mouth, the fire comes and that burns everything into ashes. And at that time, Sa Nirikshya, so these yogi, he sees that Sa Nirikshya, Vishwam Niryati, and he gives up the Maharloka planet, Siddheshwara Yushtadishyam, and he uses some airplane, it is mentioned. Yat Dvai Parardhyam Tat U Parameshtyam. Parameshtyam is the Satyaloka. So this yogi who sees that everything is getting destroyed by the fire coming from the mouth of Ananta, they move to Parameshtyam, which is Satyalokam, and they stay there in the Satyalokam till the destruction of the Satyalokam also. And it is uncountable number of years. So at the time of death of Brahma, the Satyalokam is destroyed. So they stay there. Those great yogis, they reach that place and they stay there in the Satyalokam till the universe gets destroyed. And Satyaloka is not any lesser. Though we say that Brahma Bona Loka Punaravartino Arjunavi, Krishna also says one who reaches Brahmalokam also sometimes falls into this world. But generally, the beings in the Satyaloka are very, very highly advanced and they are great rishis, and most of them, they will get liberated at the end of their life. Na yatra shoko, na jara. So in that Satyaloka also, na yatra shoko, there is no shokam, na jara, there is no old age, na mrityur, it is mentioned because it is uncountable number of years where they will be staying. Na artihi, there is no pain, there is no disease, there is no old age, no anxiety, na udvekam, rite kutaschit. But sometimes they feel the pain. The beings in the Satyaloka, they also feel the pain. Rite kutaschit, sometimes they feel the pain. Yachit tatoda kripayanidam vidam. And why do they feel the pain sometimes? Because of the kripa towards the conditioned souls in this material world, in this world. So they see that these beings are suffering for no reason, and so they get that compassion, and that is a way of suffering in the Satyalokam. It is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. Duranta dukkha prabhava anudarshanat. So seeing that anudarshanat, seeing that the jivas are experiencing duranta dukkha, continuous misery, which is not possible to get rid of, duranta dukkham, prabhavam, repeatedly taking birth and death, seeing that they feel kripaya, they feel the consciousness very soft, it gets melted, their heart gets melted seeing this unnecessary stay of the jivas in the Kali Yuga, in the material world, and that is the way they suffer. Then after reaching Satyaloka, the devotee is specifically able to be incorporated fearlessly by the subtle body. So now he has reached the Satyalokam. He has to progress further. It is not the end. It is also one of the points where he sees, and he will leave from that point also, the great yogi. Tad Vishesham Pratibadya Nirbhaya. So then he is specifically able to live without any fear, without any doubt, because he knows that he is going to reach the supreme destination, Paramapadam. And this is just a stopping point. So this Satyaloka is just a stopping point, a visiting point for him, for that great yogi. Tad Vishesham Pratibadya Nirbhayas. That's why it is called, that yogi is Nirbhaya here. He is fearless. Tena Atmana Apaha Anala Murti Atvaran. So then he goes on further to cross the 7 layers that is covering this material universe. So this universe, every universe, that is coming from the pose of Lord Vishnu, Mahavishnu, is covered with the 7 layers. Earth, water, fire, ether, air, and then the Ahankara, and then the Buddhi, and so on. So 7 layers are covering, and each layer is 10 times the other layer. In the first layer, it is mentioned, somewhere Prabhupada mentions it is 40 million miles or so, the layer, and then each layer is 10 times higher than that. So yogi passes through each of this layer, and when he is passing through each of this layer, he will be shedding the corresponding gross material manifestation. So he will gradually give up the identification with Panchabhuta in that way, one after the other. And when he crosses all these 7 layers, so it is mentioned, the devotee is specifically able to be incorporated fearlessly by the subtle body. He still has that subtle body. He has given up the identification with the gross body, but the subtle body is still remaining. So with the subtle body, which is similar to the gross body, he gradually crosses different stages of existence and shedding each gross manifestation as he crosses that. And then he surpasses the subtle body also. The Sukshma Degam also he leaves. So Stula Degam he leaves one after the other as he passes through the 7 layers. Then Granena Gandham Rasena. So then there are Sukshmam, the subtle body that is carrying the impression of sense of touch, sound, taste, and then smell. So he gives up the subtle impressions also. Granena Gandham, Rasena Vairasam, Rupam cha Drishtya, the form of the seeing, Shvasanam Tvachaiva, Shrotrena Chopetya Navo Gunatvam, Pranena Chakutim, Upaiti Yogi. So the devotee surpasses the subtle objects of different senses, like aroma by smelling, the palate by tasting, vision by seeing forms, touch by contacting, the vibrations of the ear. So all these tanmatras, the 5 tanmatras also he leaves. And then he gives up all the sense organs also, which are cause of all the material activities. And then in that way, he surpasses both Stula Degam and Sukshma Degam. Stula Degam he leaves. And then now he gives up the Sukshma Degam also, the subtle body also he gives up. So thus, giving up both the subtle and gross forms, he enters into the plane of Ahankaram. And then he merges the Sattva Rajas Tamas also into that. And then he gives up the Ahankaram in Sattvam and Rajas. And then finally he gives up the Tamas, everything he gives up. And now he is in the Shuddha Sattva state. So the yogi is now completely purified. So this purified soul, only the purified soul can attain the perfection of associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in complete bliss. Tena Atmanatmanam Upaiti Shantam. So Tena, by this purification, so he has to undergo various levels of purification, gross level of purification, subtle level of purification, then giving up the Ahankara, then giving up the Sattva Rajas Tamas, merging everything into the Mahat Tattvam. Now he is in the Shuddha Sattva state. So reaching the Vaikuntha Lokam is not at all an easy task. One who wants to associate with the Lord in the Vaikuntha Lokam has to be completely cleansed of all kinds of contamination. Tena Atmanatmanam, by this means of purification, Upaiti Shantam, he Atmanam Upaiti, he attains the Atma, Paramatma, and he then rests. And he is completely satisfied. Anandam, Anandamayam. So such a yogi, now who is completely cleansed and who is enjoying the association with Paramatma, is now totally purified, and he is enjoying the Anandamayam, the bliss that is not comparable with any of the pleasures that we see in this world or even in the Satyalokam. So beings in the Satyalokam and Maharlokam, they also enjoy great bliss. But this yogi who has reached the Vaikuntha Lokam, he is experiencing the Anandam that is not at all comparable with anything else. Etam gatim bhagavatim gatoyah savai punar neha visharjate anga. So having reached that perfection, he is not at all attracted by the material world anymore. So he completely gives up any kind of attraction towards this Maya, having attained that association with Bhagavan, personal association with Bhagavan. So here Shukadeva Goswami is explaining in the 32nd verse, Your Majesty Maharaja Parikshit, know that all that I have described in reply to your proper inquiry is just according to the version of Vedas. Ete Shruti Te Nripa Veda Gita. So whatever that Shukadeva Goswami was explaining is according to the Vedas. So when we read such descriptions in Srimad Bhagavatam, we have to understand that these are based on Vedas, and the Vedas are pramanam. Nothing is coming out of imagination. We have to accept the pramanam as Vedas here. We can otherwise never know the existence of such planets like Satyalokam, Maharlokam, so on. So there is no scope for us also to find out the existence of such planets. So we have to take the version of the Vedas. I'm not saying we don't have any way, so we have to choose the Vedas as pramanam. I'm saying that the Vedas, they cannot cheat. They don't cheat. The great sages, they have written Smritis, great Shastras, and the Upanishads. They are meant for guiding all the jivas back to the Vaikuntha Lokam. So therefore, we have to have faith in the Vedas, the words of the Vedas. So here Shukadeva Goswami is also mentioning all that I have replied, it is already there in Vedas, Veda Gita, and they are according to the version of Vedas. So nothing is out of the jurisdiction of Vedas. They are all, if you read the Upanishads carefully, we will find the descriptions of all these descriptions. So this was described personally by Lord Krishna unto Brahma, with whom the Lord was satisfied upon being properly worshipped. So Lord Krishna spoke this version to Brahma at the time of creation. And that is also coming in the future chapters. What Krishna exactly spoke to Brahma, those are discussed in the second canto, in the future chapters. So there are 3 more shlokas, I will complete them. So in the 33rd shloka, Nahi ato anya shiva panta. So here Shukadeva Goswami is saying, there is no other auspicious path other than the bhakti. Nahi ato anyaha shiva panta. Anyaha shiva panta. There is no other auspicious path. Vishataka samshruta viha. For the people who are wandering in the samsara, there is no other auspicious path. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Yata Bhavet. Only the bhakti unto Vasudeva is alone the auspicious path for all the jivas who are wandering within this material world. Even the process of jnana and yoga, they are not perfect without the finishing touch of bhakti. Even jnanis and yogis, they can achieve perfection only by having bhakti as their element in their sadhana. And it is also mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam that even a jnani, naishkarmyam api achyuta bhava varjitam. One may be a perfect karma yogi. Naishkarmyam api, even though he may be a karma yogi, achyuta bhava varjitam. If he doesn't have the bhakti towards achyuta bhava varjitam, nashobate, it is not nice, it is not beautiful, it is not looking good. Nashobate jnana malam niranjanam. And similarly, one may be a jnani also, but if he is a jnani without bhakti, then he also cannot progress. So whether it is a karma yogi or a jnani, they need to have bhakti included in their sadhana to achieve perfection. So therefore, bhakti is required even for karmis and jnanis. So it is the most auspicious path for everyone. And Bhagavan Brahma Katsneya Trir Anvikshya Manishaya. So the great personality Brahma, with great attention and concentration of the mind, studied the Vedas 3 times. Vedas are so exhaustive. But Bhagavan Brahma, the great Brahma, Katsneya, he carefully summarizingly studied Trir Anvikshya Manishaya. Carefully he studied the 3 Vedas, Tat Adyavasyat Kutasto. Kutasto means his concentration being fully absorbed in understanding the conclusion of Vedas. So Brahma attempted to understand what these Vedas are saying? There are so many, the Vedas are so vast. What is the conclusion of all these Vedas? Radhir Atman Yato Bhavet. All the conclusions of Vedas are pointing to just one thing, Ratir Atman Yato Bhavet. One should develop attraction to the Paramatma, Lord Sri Krishna. That single objective is the objective of all the Vedas. So if we accept this even without undergoing the study of Vedas, still we are okay. Still we have understood the aim of the Vedas. So we are fine with that. But after having read all the Vedas, if one doesn't come to this conclusion, Ratira Atman Yato Bhavet, if one doesn't come to the conclusion that attraction, the Rati, developing the attraction towards Bhagavan is the goal, then such reading of Veda is useless. So coming to this conclusion is the most important part, not the reading of the Vedas also. So Shukadeva Goswami is emphasizing the importance of developing attraction towards Bhagavan. Bhagavan Sarvabhuteshu Lakshitaha Swatmana Harihi Drishyer Buddhi Adibir Darshra Lakshanair Anumapakai. So one can even use one's Anumana to understand this. Bhagavan Sarvabhuteshu Lakshitaha. So Lakshitaha, a sane person could see the presence of Bhagavan, can understand the presence of Bhagavan along with one's own Atma, Swaatma. So just like we don't need any external proof to prove our own existence, right? So the Atma is existing within us. We don't need any external proof for that. Because Atma by its nature is conscious. So it is aware. The self-awareness is the consciousness. But other objects are not like that. We need some other pramana to prove the existence of other objects, other non-living, non-insentient objects. But Atma, we don't need any proof for its existence. We can see that self-awareness is already there. So just like how we can perceive Atma by one's intelligence, by observing that self-awareness, one can also understand Bhagavan along with that. Bhagavan Sarvabhuteshu Lakshitaha, one can see that Swa Atmana, along with one Atma. So this Bhagavan, Paramatma and Jivatma, they are staying together. We can understand the presence of Jivatma without any other pramana required. Similarly, one can also understand the presence of Paramatma because the Jivatma is not independently experiencing to experience any small thing, even to see or act in this universe, act in this world. That smriti is required, the memory is required, and that memory is coming from Lord Krishna. So the jiva is totally dependent. It needs body for acting, right? The jiva cannot experience its desire without the presence of body. So that body is provided by Krishna. So if we carefully see, every aspect of the jiva's life is because of the presence of Paramatma, who is situated along with Jivatma. So therefore, Drishyer Buddhi, by one's intelligence, one can see Buddhi Adibir, Drashta Lakshanair Anumapakai. By Anumanam also, by hypothesis, by one's intelligence, and properly employing the correct hypothesis, one can also understand the presence of Bhagavan within one's heart. The last shloka, the 36th shloka, I'm just completing. Tasmat Sarvatmana Rajan, Hari Sarvatra Sarvada, Shotavya Kirtitavyascha, Smartavya Bhagavan Nranam. So therefore, so having convinced Parikshit by explaining in various ways how by meditating on Paramatma, whether in the form of Virat Rupam or in the form of personal form, one can attain the Paramapadam, the highest destination, the Vaikuntha Loka. Here, Shukadeva Goswami is concluding, therefore, Sarvatmana Rajan, Hari Sarvatra Sarvada. So, Shotavya Kirtitavyascha, Smartavya Bhagavan Dinam. So one must hear, one must chant the glories of the Lord, one must hear the glories of the Lord. So as we saw, the meditation of the yogi is not possible in this yuga particularly. But what is easily possible in this yuga is Shrotavya Kirtitavya. The Shravanam and Kirtanam is very easily possible within this age. And so if one gets the opportunity for Shravanam and Kirtanam, one should not miss, because it is awarding unimaginable benefit to the listener and speaker. And once we hear sufficiently the glories of the Lord, and once we chant sufficiently the glories of the Lord, the smaranam becomes easy. Remembering the glories of the Lord, His qualities, His kalyana gunams becomes very easy if we have carefully heard the glories of the Lord through Shravanam and Kirtanam. So therefore, one should employ one's intelligence, one's ears, everything in the process of Shravanam, and one should use one's mouth in glorifying the gunas of the Lord, form of the Lord, and then the smaranam becomes very easy, and then one can easily achieve the supreme destination. There is one more shloka, I'm sorry, 37th shloka. Pibanti ye bhagavata atmana satam katamritam. So therefore, Shukadeva Goswami is saying, since Shravanam and Kirtanam easily leads to Smaranam, the meditation on the form of the Lord, by which one can attain the Paramapadam, supreme destination, Pibantiye. So he is asking everyone, those who drink, Pibantiye, Bhagavata Atmana Satam. So this Bhagavatam, the Bhagavata Atmana Satam, I'm sorry. So the Satam, the devotees are Atma of the Bhagavan. So they are very beloved to Bhagavan, and they drink this Katamritam. Pibantiye Bhagavata Atmana Satam Katamritam. They drink. How do they drink? They don't drink through mouth. Shavana Puteshu. Through their ears, they drink this Bhagavatam. Fully they drink. Just like if someone gives Amritam to us, we want to drink it fully and we want to fill our stomach up to the neck. So just like that, the Bhagavatas, they great devotees, they hear, and through by hearing Shravana Puteshu, through their ears, they fully drink the Bhagavata Katamritam. Samritam, fully they drink, completely they drink. They just immerse themselves in hearing the glories of the Lord. Punanti, and that leads to the purification. Punanti, te vishaya vidushita ashayam. One gets purified of all the material contamination. Then what happens after the purification? Vrajanti tat charana saroru antikam. And then they go back, they go to the charana, Lord's lotus feet, saroru antikam. And they go near to the lotus feet of the Lord, and which means they go to the spiritual world so easily. So what is achievable by a yogi after great effort in pulling the prana from the Mooladharam, bringing to the top, between the eyebrows, and then leaving the body through the Sahasradalam, and then passing through various stages, and then finally reaching the abode of the Lord. That is easily possible for devotees just by performing this Shravanam and Kirtanam. So we should be eager to drink Pibantiye Bhagavata Satam Amritam. So Katamritam, we should drink through Karna Puteshu, through the ears, and that will lead to all perfection and the purification. Whatever purification is required, we need not care for that. The Bhagavatam itself, as it enters through our ears, it will purify all the contaminations, and one becomes eligible to reach the lotus feet of the Lord. So we'll continue the Srimad Bhagavatam discussion, 3rd chapter, probably in the next week. Thank you all for joining. So we'll end the session by chanting Hare Krishna. Please unmute and chant. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Prabhuji.